Thank you. All right, so I just like to say I do these very, very like low key casual. If you've never done anything with me before, like feel free to jump in and ask questions. I will ask you if you can either put in the chat or share out if you are particularly interested in a grade band over the others. So like if you are interested in K5, 6, 8, 9, 12, and then I can spend more time on that if the group is kind of focused in one way or the other. But I can also cover all of the stuff that I know. All right, are you guys seeing the slide deck? I think I clicked the wrong one. We got it? Okay, thank you. So I'm Samantha Delby from Nubo Co. I'm the director of K-12 education. So I run all of our programs, both student facing and our teacher professional development. And today we're going to talk a little bit about kind of the broader picture of computer science, because I always like to have us all on the same page of what we're talking about when we're talking about PD. And then we'll talk about the programs that we're offering that are covered through the state grants. Talk about what you should do before you apply for that if you haven't already. And we've got 2 AEA people here, at least. Do anyone else from the AEA? Okay, that can, if they aren't in your region, find the person in your region to help you with that. And then also what that grant piece looks like, and any other questions that come up, like we can totally go off script, whatever you guys need. All right, so when I talk about computer science education, we're talking about more than just the coding, algorithms, programming. Okay, we're talking about the creativity aspects, problem solving, big data, how you deal with big data, how you deal with people in computer science, the global impact, all of that. And I like just to talk about that because sometimes we get so focused on like the coding piece because it can be fun for a lot of students, but we want to make sure that we are really catering to that broader perspective. And that's part of the inclusivity and the equity piece as well when we're working with students. Before, and this is my recommendation, but a strong recommendation, before you go and apply for the funds, we highly recommend that you work with your local AEA representative and go through what's called a script workshop. The AEAs are implementing that in different ways in their regions that work for them, but these workshops are designed for a district to have a group that involves decision makers at the district level, administrators in buildings, and classroom teachers to all get together and see what are they already doing, where are they on these different rubrics, and what do they need to do to move to the next step. These are extremely helpful in developing your district's K-12 plan, which is required to be submitted by starting next July 1st. So all districts have to do that anyway. These workshops are great and we'll walk you through that. And then you can identify the gaps that you have in your district and see what opportunities are available through the funding that fill those needs. So I wanted to spend some time on that because if you don't know what you need and you're just going and chasing where the funding is, which we have seen over the past several years, that's great. You're probably making some headway, but you're not really getting that overall need that your district may have. So
hey, Samantha.
Yeah.
The slides aren't progressing.
Oh.
I'm assuming you maybe want those to?
Yeah, that would be great.
Because I'm seeing like, ooh, slide 4 is script, but I just see the intro. Am I the only one that sees the intro?
Nope, you're probably right, because I think I have it opened in 2 spots. Here we go. Is it like presenting now?
Now it's presenting.
Excellent. Thank you for that feedback, Bridget. All right, here we go. What is computer science? There's my peacock and all of the different things. There's script. I haven't really missed much yet, but thank you. I'm glad we didn't make it all the way through and you guys are still looking at the same slide. Okay, so now we're looking at the overview of the Code.org program. So they do have a progression for K-12. CS Fundamentals is that K-5 piece. CS Discoveries is designed to be 6-10, but in Iowa, we're really promoting that for middle school 6-8 because those are the standards that it meets. We will see some districts, if they don't have anything prior to high school, they may start with Discoveries and then move it back to middle school. But that's just kind of like, maybe a starting case that you consider. It would not, it would not fulfill the high school standards, so we wouldn't count it towards that requirement at the state level. And then CS Principles is the course for 9-12. And that is, we'll get into a little bit more, but it says AP on there and sometimes it turns people off. It is AP optional, and it's really designed to be an inclusive, rigorous, but also like open to no prior experience for students. So computer science fundamentals, I saw that we've got K5 in here quite a bit. So this is going, and there's our another front. So K5 is elementary school, and you'll see here it says courses A through F. They do align with kindergarten through 5th grade, but they're designed to be flexible because, and we've talked about this with many districts, when you're first starting, you may not have 4th and 5th graders that have any prior experience, or the majority of them don't. And so you don't, maybe that E and F courses are not the appropriate fit for them. And so you would start them in like C or D and work them up. And then over time, you're able to fit this kind of course progression, but you may not start there. If anyone is interested in checking this out, I am probably going to screw up my slide deck here, but I'll throw this in the chat and then that will let you kind of poke around as well. And while this is kind of loading up again, I will mention that code.org's curricula are completely free forever. There's no subscription. So any teacher or you could go right now and create an account for free and try it out, see if it's a good fit. And then if your teachers would like professional development training around that, then that's the only cost that's associated with it, and that can be covered by the grant. So the course background is kind of what I was talking about, that flexible implementation. It does have the developmentally appropriate, skills for each grade band. And importantly, there's no prior experience assumed for both teachers and students. Now, of course, we want our teachers to gain knowledge, but that is designed to help them get started. We don't want that to be a barrier that they feel like they have to have a full computer science degree to be able to teach it. So sometimes you hear, teachers learning along with their students, and that can be like either exciting or like frustrating for people, depending on what side of the camp you land on. But the idea is that, like, yes, you are going to learn with your students because they're going to have questions and creativity and all of these things with them, but you want to be able to become confident through other avenues as well. This one, I like to point the ones on the right side. So these are the skills that we're really wanting to meet with elementary school. All of these skills you guys have seen forever, all the time in education. So again, we're not just getting at that coding piece, but they're working together, they're solving problems, they're getting frustrated, but learning how to deal with that frustration, and giving them those skills that is going to translate. So here's our course. We've talked about the A through F. You'll also notice that there are pre-reader express course and the express course. Those are different times for them. So typically, like starting on the course A side, I think it's about 15 hours of content. On the course F side, it's more around 30. But say, you're kind of fitting it into an awkward piece and you want to use the express course, that's about, I think, 20 hours for students. It is mostly what we call plugged lessons, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But we really, sometimes that's a good fit to get started. And then the pre-reader is similar, but again, with more visuals along there. You'll see here, we talk about unplugged. So these are things away from the computer. They oftentimes have large movement or gross motor skills that are involved in them. It's really teaching those concepts away from a computer so that they don't associate them only with programming. And then they're going to practice those concepts and skills in a plugged lesson where they are at the computer. So it has that balance. Oftentimes we'll see teachers that have started this without going through the PD, and they're like, oh, I've never even done the unplugged stuff because I didn't think it was valuable. And I have like a little bit of a panic inside and take a deep breath and like tell them, like, sometimes those are the most important ones because it teaches that skill in a more broader method, and the students can then apply it to different areas. So here's an example of unplugged activities. So they learn dance moves and how that relates to looping. They may do partner or small group activities where they're giving instructions and they have to move things around and see if they end up with the intended result. Or down at the bottom with the kind of like black and white check boxes, if you can see that, they're trying to make a visual representation and giving instructions for that. And we'll see teachers that use those in different ways, either in a focus lesson, or they might do that lesson and then have opportunities for students to go through that. If they finish work early, to go grab one of these and make something for students to do. They get to school early, all of those things. I will say here, caveat, that's not the only time we want students doing it. We don't want that to be the students that finish early or those things. We want it to be accessible to all, but we have seen teachers kind of integrate that into their day beyond just the lesson. This is one example of a plugged activity. This one is more puzzle based. Students have to figure out how to use the blocks to move them through. You'll see that they have a couple of different options in those blocks, where here they have very explicit instructions, but you'll also note that they have a repeat option over here, so they can solve it in a couple of different ways. I don't know that I have an image in here, but there are also open-ended projects throughout the courses, especially as they get older as well. So it's a mix of those unplugged, puzzle-based, and then open-ended, more creativity aspects for students to design things and kind of really explore. The lessons also have bridging activities. So typically you'll see a sequence of unplugged lesson where they're doing something with the group and movement involved or something away from the computer. And then the teacher will have guidance through the lesson plans to introduce it by relating it back to what they did in the unplugged one, and then relating it to what they'll be doing in those plugged lessons. So it's bringing them in. The other nice thing, and we can look at some lessons later on in the session if anyone's interested, you will see at the bottom of the CS Fundamentals lessons, cross-curricular standards that are at least touched upon, right? So we're not saying that this is going to replace NGSS standards or anything like that, but it's a great opportunity for teachers to draw connections to other content areas and support those as well. Teaching and learning resources. So Code.org is really known for their lesson plans. I always say that there's way more in there than the teacher's probably going to use in their class. And that's so that the teachers have choices to make based on their students. So they may, the first time through, do it exactly as stated with the warm up, the activity, and a journaling or whatever they want to do for like their end of the day wrap up. But then as they get comfortable and experience it with their students, they're going to maybe look at some of the other options or suggestions, and they're going to mix those in so that it really meets the needs of their students. And that's, sometimes teachers feel comfortable doing that right away, but it's there if they need it to just get started and survive. We totally get that. There's tons of high quality videos that can either introduce the content or are there to support the teachers. So sometimes there are videos that show an activity in progress, so a teacher knows kind of what it looks like and what to expect. Curriculum guide is always free. And then there are teacher forums. We do support teachers in Iowa whenever they reach out for questions with both us and the facilitators. But there's a forum out there of teachers all over the world sharing how they've done things and asking questions. And then there's a teacher dashboard to be able to see the progress of their students in their classes. These are some examples of what students would be doing, not necessarily in every single course, but they do get to experience, making games, doing art, those mid-course projects that I mentioned, and then end of course projects. So that's kind of the overall structure. And you see that they're trying to give them a different examples of using computer science, because not all kids are going to like the games. Not all of them are going to be drawn to visual artistic things. All right, so this is the professional learning, the PD for teachers. So curriculum, I mentioned, no cost forever. For fundamentals, what is included is both a one-day workshop for the intro to get teachers started before the school year. So this would fall next summer, sometime between June 1st and September 30th. It's going to talk about, touch a little bit on what computer science is, why it's important. It includes facilitators modeling a progression of unplugged to plugged lessons. that caters to the audience. So if it's a group of all fourth grade teachers, they're going to pick something from the fourth grade curriculum. If it's a smattering of people from all grades, and they're going to pick something kind of in the middle. And then they're also going to get into small groups, and they are going to go through additional lessons in those progressions of unplugged to plugged, for the course that makes the most sense for them, to see what they are like, share out as a group. And then there's going to be time that focuses on equity. How do you build that inclusive classroom? How do we teach computer science to the very broad spectrum of students that we may have? Those kind of things. And we'll wrap up the day talking about implementation. So what do they think they want to do to implement the course? That's a great time if it's a district workshop where we have an administrator come in and talk about, what's possible. And the teachers and administrators can have a good discussion about, okay, does this fit in every other Friday, opposite social studies, or is this going to be done in the media lab? And the classroom teachers are going to do the unplugged, and the media center person is going to do the plugged lessons, or whatever structure they come up with. We can do private workshops, so like district focus workshops for at least 10 people, because we want to have good conversation in that. But if you have just fewer people than that interested, I've never had a district tell me no, that someone can't join in if they've got one. And depending on the interest, we will also set up just kind of, a couple of options for people to attend over the summer if we have a lot of onesie, twosie interest out there. So we're waiting to see what that looks like. And then teachers can earn 1 licensure renewal credit for the intro workshop, and 1 renewal credit for the deep dive. So leading into the deep dive, that is for after teachers have been implementing for a while. During that first school year, intro gets them started, and deep dive, they come back and they say, well, we thought this great implementation plan would work and it's not. What do we do now? Or we've got more questions, or these are the berries we experienced that we didn't expect. And the facilitators look at answers to pre-survey responses from the participants in that group, and then it's really catered to those specific needs of those teachers. Again, that's a 1-day workshop. So that would be scheduled sometime probably during the school year, that works for the district or the participants, to be able to have that follow-up and support them in their implementation. I'm going to pause because I always do this where I talk a bunch and I fire hose information. So what questions do we have so far? Elementary. Good still? Whew, all right, you guys are great at absorbing, or maybe not. Maybe you haven't realized you haven't absorbed yet. Okay, do we have interest in middle school? Yes, it looks like that. Okay, did anyone join that's interested in high school? Or are we just elementary, middle school? Cool. So CS Discoveries is the next in that progression. As I mentioned earlier, it's that 6 through 10, but we're in Iowa really focusing on the middle school, filling in that gap. And this is, oops. Our link here for anyone who would like to follow along on that site and poke around. And CS Discoveries is probably my favorite one, because it has, it's really, really flexible. We've probably stretched it to its flexibility in multiple different districts and working with their needs. But it also gives students a broad perspective, that one we were talking about at the beginning, where they are doing, coding in lots of different units, but they also have units dedicated, again, to entirely unplugged activities, where the students are forced to figure out how to collaborate and work in groups and problem solve related to computer science. So it is designed to be accessible to all students. Again, even if they don't have something in elementary school, they can still be successful in this course. And if they do have experience, they're going to have some familiarity with the platform. Flexible implementation. And it's also really focused on that second one, that personal expression. So giving students choice in what their projects look like. So they're going to have activities that they do throughout. This is not one of those programs where it's going to tell them they did it wrong if they have an extra space in there, or if they don't use the exact same color. So when students are developing their websites, they get to decide, what content is in there and what color they use and all of those things, but they're still learning the general structure of how they would do that, as an example. These are the 6 units as they break down. They're designed to spiral on each other. So, and again, this is like the basis of what it's designed for. I don't know if we have any schools in Iowa that are doing exactly this. Maybe a school that does like 7th grade with the semester 1 and 8th grade, they do the semester 2, but it is extremely like flexible. We've had districts that will take like unit 1 and split it by its chapters and have students focus on that so that they can get more content in. We see a lot of implementation in the exploratories in middle school, so like a 9 or 12 week. And the nice thing about this is that code.org does have a sheet that gives you suggestions on, if you're in this implementation scenario, here's what you might want to do. We have that conversation every single year with tons of different schools. But as far as the unit specifics, that unit 1 problem solving kind of throws teachers for a loop sometimes because it is completely unplugged. They're not coding in that. And that is by design. Because they will see students that come in having taken a summer camp of coding every year since they were 5. And they come in, if they do coding, they're off and running. And the other students are like, well, I'm not good at this because, Sue over there is just like really has it understands it really well. So this unit is designed to give them perspectives and work in groups and build that community before they get into any of the coding aspect. Now, I did say, like, if you've got a smaller time chunk and you really want to be able to include all of the other fun and educational stuff in there, there are ways to go about that too. But that's the why behind it, because we get asked that all the time. This is a computer science class. Why are we not coding? Web development, kind of like says its name. They learn HTML and CSS. They develop their own websites, animations, and games. This one, I think, let's see. I'm going to jump ahead to some of the visuals. These are, they're going to have all of those same teacher supports, lesson plans, videos, forums. Here we go. If we can kind of see down here, you'll see that they're dragging the block over, but then it looks like text. So in code.org, it allows students to either program using block code, or they can program using JavaScript in the same environment. They can choose that. So if you do have, Susie, who's been doing coding since she's been 5, and she's like, I already know this stuff. What do you got for me? And like, okay, like start typing in JavaScript. And now you have an extra challenge of figuring out how to do that. But for students that don't have that prior experience, they can still use the block-based code and complete the same projects. This is what Web Lab looks like. It is all browser-based. They don't have to install anything on computers. They're developing websites here and learning about privacy issues, user experience. So how do we design for people with disabilities or, people that are aging? Do we make things bigger? All of those different things while they're learning the coding aspects. Game Lab, they're creating games. And then App Lab is very similar to Game Lab, but they are developing applications. And in Unit 6, they are working with physical computing devices. So circuit playgrounds, that's what this image is here. It is a physical device, and that comes with part of the program. So the grant does cover a classroom kit of circuit playgrounds. That's 15 of them, designed if you have more than 15 kids for pair programming. And the students get to experience it, making lights light up. And the LEDs are red, green, blue, or RGB, so they can do color mixing. There's sounds, which is super annoying when you're an educator and you hear 15 devices buzzing, but exciting for the kids, yay. And it has accelerometers in there, so they're working with X, Y, and Z axis, all of these fun things that they have access to. So this professional learning is more intense. It looks different than just the one-day workshops for fundamentals. So it has 5 days in the summer, and we will have works. Again, we're looking to see what demand we have, but we usually have at least 2 options in the summer. If those options don't work, this comes up every year, we have like 67 regional partners in the United States. And especially with this past year, a lot of them offer virtual workshops. We will find a workshop for people to attend and help them participate in that. So if those dates that we have don't work, we'll work with them to figure that out. So that's to get them started. They experience a lot of units 1 through 3. They also talk about pedagogy and strategies, implementation strategies for students in the classroom. All of that to support that. That a lot is the mindset of who should be in your class, right? We want that to be open to anyone, and we have a lot of stereotypes in computer science. So it's kind of dealing with that aspect. And then there are follow-up sessions during the school year as they are implementing. So in the past, this has looked like 4 Saturdays throughout the year, but with the ability to add virtual workshops in the past year, year and a half, we also have the opportunity to do shorter, like weeknight options. So those would be 8 modules if we have that, and they would be able to choose whatever works for their schedule. And again, if whatever we have in Iowa does not work for them, we can reach out to our friends and they are welcome to join there as well. Online forum and community for discoveries and principles as well. Here's what this looks like. Again, no cost for the curriculum. Circuit playground kit is included. Also, the grant covers $100 classroom supply reimbursement. So this might be like in that first unit, they do aluminum boat challenge. I think there's an alternative if you have like a project lead the way course. I think they do that in some of the classes as well. So there's an alternative to that, but getting aluminum foil, markers, sticky notes, whatever you might need to implement the course, that is included. And because we have a lot more time, the participants are with us, they can earn either 2 licensure renewal credits or 2 graduate credits. This one, so we do have teachers register, that opens in January, and that's so that they are in the system and can choose which workshops to go to, and we can make sure that they don't fall through the cracks. It also gets them added as a verified teacher so that they have access to all of the like teacher answer keys and suggested items that we don't want students to have access to. If any of you are interested in that, and you want to know when they open up, we can add you to the newsletter, and we always include it in that, but usually it's like mid-January that opens. All right, time for me to pause again. What questions do we have? There's going to be a quiz at the end, so making sure you guys are taking good notes. Okay, is anyone interested in CS principles, or I can jump to talking about the grant?
Samantha, I'm wondering if you could just do a little fast pass in case, for the recording purposes, in case there would be somebody that would want to just kind of have a quick peek at what that might look like. Or for some of our smaller districts that might be looking globally 612.
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you.
So CS Principles is a College Board course. So this is another one of those like PSAs. Like there are several, last time I checked, there were about 10 endorsed programs. So please like shop around and make sure that you find the right fit for your school, your teacher, your students' needs, because there are a lot of different varieties. To say that, I mentioned at the beginning that even though it's an AP course, code.org wanted it to be very approachable. And so in Iowa, we see sometimes it's just offered as an introductory computer science course, and that's totally fine. We also see a lot of this, especially in our smaller districts, where they may offer it as an intro course, but they have like 1 or 2 students that really want to take the AP exam. That's what I like about this program in particular, is it makes it very simple to do that. The only like major difference is that there is a performance task that the students have to submit to the College Board. The teachers cannot give them any feedback on that. So they can't assess it. But if they have like just, doing it as an introductory course, they could choose to use that as an assessment. It does have 10 units, and it's designed to be a year-long course. We'll say again, we have had districts in the past that have done it over a semester. Not as quite as flexible as like the Discoveries one, because it's designed, to follow the College Board requirements, but we have definitely worked with schools that have modified it. This is going to look familiar. They have all kinds of fun widgets. These are great. So I wish that I had these in college when I was learning about binary and internet protocols and things, but it allows students to have interactive ways to learn about how and why the internet was designed the way it is, to learn about binary, to learn about compressions. This is just like, the words are probably not sounding very exciting at all to you, but the activities are super exciting, engaging for students. I actually had saw one teacher share in the Facebook group that their student was doing this pixel widget, and she said that she would love a job that she could just do that all day, every day. And what job can she do working with pixels? And so we're trying to find someone that she can talk to about that. App Lab is going to look similar to what we saw for Discoveries, where again, you can have block-based or text coding, and kind of go into that. This one adds additional like debugging access for students to walk through and find their problems. I will also say for both Discoveries and Principles, there is the opportunity for students to pair program. So you can do that in a couple of different ways, but as far as what that means in the system, students can work together at the same computer and in one of their accounts, but both of them will get credit for completing that. So it would show up in the teacher dashboard that way. And that's to try and mimic how some software development companies do work in the real world, where they will, both work on the same computer at the same time to work through things. And hopefully they get credit as well. Professional learning is very much similar to Discovery. So you have the 5 days in the summer, follow-up sessions. We try to pair them on the same days for Discoveries and Principles. So if we have a district that, if they're coming in person, they can travel together. We've seen a lot of synergy out of that because they start to feel like they have a community. That's another big piece of the professional development, is just finding teachers across the state that are going through the same thing, especially in our smaller districts. They may be the one person that's doing K-12, and that can feel very lonely. And so we want to make sure that they have a community of support that they can connect with and they can vent to and celebrate as well. This is going to be the same. There's no kit for principals, but they do get the classroom supply reimbursement and can do graduate or licensure renewal credits. All right, so that was a quick overview of CS Principles and the other programs. Any questions about CS Principles before we go into the grant? Okay, so this is the simplest grant application I have ever seen from the state. So even if it's just districts applying because it's so simple, I want you to apply because you have the need. But it is really, I tried to take a screenshot here, but it is mostly like yes and no radio buttons that you click to say yes or no. There's a drop down for when you plan to start implementing, and I think it says they prioritize next fall. And then you type in either which curriculum or curricula that you plan to use, grade levels that will be impacted, number of classrooms, number of students. And then this is really the one that you have to type more for. How will the curriculum be sustained once the grant funding expires? Okay, so for that one, it's, if there were to be a fee for some of the programs, you would put that in, like, we're going to budget it or whatever that looks like for your district. For the Code.org ones, there's no fee for the curriculum. So you could just put in there's no fee, so we don't have to pay for that. But you also might want to consider how you're going to support your teachers that doesn't have necessarily a monetary cost, but a time cost. So you might say, like, if you're looking at K-5, we're going to allow time during professional development days for teachers that are piloting the curriculum or that are implementing the curriculum to get together and talk about that. I don't know that that's needed for the grant, but I think that does show that you're investing more than just, we're going to do this and hopefully it sticks. So that might be something, and I would love to hear from the AEA representatives if you talked anything about that aspect of the sustaining piece, because that's usually what we see is, teachers go to training, they come back, and then it just is like they're supposed to do it. But how are we actually going to support them long term? So for us, and this is going to be probably different for different providers, but you would if you're interested, you can reach out to myself and we can talk about the specific needs that you have and what you're thinking. You apply in the iowogrants.gov application. And then we would create a contract that basically reflects what you applied for to make sure that we can track it and that we have like you locked in for like you're guaranteed to get spots. That there's nothing like in that contract beyond what you're getting in the grant, but that's just a way for us to track it. And then you can set a date or register depending on what program it is. I know like districts that we're talking with now, there's no way we're going to like make them pick a date in the summer. I don't know that anyone's ready for that. So it's really just like when they get closer, reach out and say, you know, here are 3 dates that would work. This is the one that we would really like. And we'll reach out to our facilitators for fundamentals to see who's available. And then for discoveries and principles, again, that would be that registration piece. And we would share the workshop dates for the summer. Okay, questions here. No questions still? All right.
I am so sorry. I just had one of my instructional coaches step in. Samantha, what you're talking about here is this is not the incentive fund, right? This is the Computer Science Curriculum and Professional Development Grant.
Yes, great point.
Clarify.
There are multiple buckets of money that make it wonderful and confusing. So this is the Curriculum and Professional Development grants, which are open now. We are expecting still the Computer Science Professional Development Incentive Fund, or CSPDIF, to open sometime. And this is great. So please let me know what's confusing about this, because I'll try to make it as clear as I can. These grants from the Department of Education, the professional development needs to happen between June 1st of 2022 through September 30th. That's when they have to start. They can span beyond that, but they have to start during that period. And so that doesn't cut off in the middle of summer with the weird fiscal requirements. The CSPD incentive funds is attached to legislation, and that is restricted to the fiscal year. And so those funds need to be used from July 1st of 2021, which is already behind us. And then they can be used through June 30th of 2022. So one thing that I think we maybe talked about was like stipends or things for teachers. So being able to combine those buckets potentially. So typically we include stipends in our programs for funding because we want to acknowledge the work and effort that teachers are putting in. The Department of Ed funding did not allow that. And so one thing you might be interested in your district to do is get funding locked in for these programs if they're a good fit. That can happen next summer. And then when that CS Professional Development Incentive Fund opens, you could submit an application for stipends for your teachers to cover that piece. That then they would have to happen, in the June timeframe. So what's unclear? Because it's a murky mess. Any other questions around that funding? Or anything to add, Bridget or Kelly? Okay, I think that is all of the content that I have for you all today. Is there anything that you'd like me to revisit? I can also share, would anyone like to see like an example of lesson plans and what those look like? All right, so I'm going to share a lesson from Course C in CS Fundamentals, and I'll share it on the screen for anyone that watches the recording. All right, do we see the My Robotic Friends Junior? Excellent, I got the right one this time. So you'll see kind of the general structure of the lesson plans, has overview, objectives, reason. It shows standards here, And then along this side, it's what the teacher needs to do ahead of time. This is one of the things that I hear a lot from teachers, that they are thankful for this because we know how much time teachers may have or not have to prep. And if they can just have it all right there and boom, 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 get it ready, it's very helpful. Vocabulary, sometimes we have teachers that do like word walls. They'll be able to pull the vocabulary, have that integrated into whatever structure they already have in their classroom. And then you see down here, again, these are just kind of like estimates on what, you know, in a perfect world, it would take 5 minutes. We know that there's gonna be kids that are super excited and wanting to chat longer or whatever may happen. They do their warm up, the actual activity. They do have these nice like teaching tips that teachers can use to help them. In this one, they are trying to build structures with cups based on instructions that look like this. So they're doing that collaboratively. And then there's the wrap up, again, with teaching tips. So, you know, pretty similar like lesson plan that you might see with all those extra supports and things in there for teachers. And then we can go into maybe, here we go. So this is what course C looks like. So I can see all of the different lessons, and they're have groupings based on concepts too. So some teachers may want to reinforce something. This happens a lot for like the 4th and 5th grade side. There are ramp up lessons for the E and F courses. So you could do those couple to see what concepts your students know already and what you need to revisit if it's the first time that you're implementing it in that grade or in that school. And then they may go back to, you know, course C or D to focus on like sequencing or something that they had gaps to fill. So then this one, so it's showing this is an unplugged activity. This one is going to be plugged activities, but we can still go in and look at lesson plan. And it's going to have that bridging activity we talked about. So a warm up, bridging activity to do with them, and then they're going to be working through the class through those different skill building, what they call skill building. They have added these challenge and practice ones in there that are kind of like extensions. So they can be used in different ways in classrooms too, that the facilitators will talk through with teachers on how that might look in their classroom. We've got these lesson extras, so they've definitely been adding more options in there to support teachers with a variety of different students. Okay, so I am going to stop sharing there and check in the chat. All right, yes, and I will share, yes, the slides and the link for people if they want to review it or weren't able to come. All right, thank you all for joining me today. I'll give you 12 minutes back for your day. And if anyone has any questions, you can feel free to reach out at samantha@nubo.co or k12@nubo.co would go to our team and someone can help you there.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Thanks, Samantha.
Thank you.